Exposed. The incredible secrets to surviving 100 days of brutal winter in the Wild West. Jack Dawson stood at dawn, the cold Wyoming wind biting against his cheeks, pulling him back into memories he'd rather forget. The world outside seemed unforgiving, just like the lingering shadow of loss that clung to him since his wife's passing. He shook himself awake, glancing at his kids, Emma and Lucas, still curled under their blankets. They were the reason he fought so hard each day. He started his morning as he always did, with a cup of coffee strong enough to put hair on his chest. Emma loved to giggle at the way he winced at the first sip. "Daddy, you look like a bear," she'd laugh, and it would bring warmth to his heart, even on the coldest days. He was determined to be their rock. Even if his own world felt like it was crumbling as he trudged off to fix fences and haul firewood. The weight of judgment from the wealthier families on his street felt like a persistent thorn in his side. "Just a handyman," they'd whisper, dismissing him as if he were invisible. Yet, he poured every ounce of determination into every job he tackled so that his little home could stay warm and full of laughter, despite the cold that howled outside. Jack longed for more time with his kids, but the bills never stopped rolling in. The air grew chillier as winter approached, the snow beginning to blanket Laramie. Jack's heart sank with every extra bill that arrived. Could he provide for Emma and Lucas? He had never let anything break him, but despair was creeping in. Just as he felt the world pressing down with its weight, a grizzled veteran named Bob entered his life. Over coffee between shifts, Bob shared tales of resilient stories of dark nights and harsh winters. "It ain't the storm that breaks ya, son. It's how you stand up to it," he'd say with a thick smile. Jack listened intently, feeling a flicker of hope ignite within him. It was comforting to know he was not alone after all. But that flicker dimmed when both Emma and Lucas fell ill. Their little faces flushed with fever sent ripples of panic through Jack. This was not just about money anymore. It was about fighting for their lives. The tight knot of fear anchored in his chest. Would he have to choose between stoicism and their health? Then came that fateful morning when Jack stood before the neighbors who had judged him, his heart pounding like a drum. He decided that their ignorance would no longer silence him. With fierce conviction, he addressed them, laying bare the arduous struggle of raising 2 children alone, the sleepless nights he endured, and the love that pushed him through each day. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The stares from the townspeople slowly shifted from scorn to surprise, and then something resembling understanding began to dapple their expressions. Perhaps they see the depth of his sacrifice. A man fighting for the 2 brightest stars in his life. Yet, the storm outside raged on, and as Jack faced a decision that could shatter everything he had fought for, he stood at a crossroads. Would he risk it all for the sake of his children, or would he let the judgments of others dictate his fate? The choice weighed heavily on him, leaving an aching anticipation hanging in the air, waiting for his next move. Jack felt a fire igniting within him as he spoke, not just to the townsfolk but to himself. He could see their faces shift, reactions flickering through confusion and empathy. For years, he'd been the shadow in their neighborhood, a handyman. A faceless worker. Now he was something more. But deep down, doubt wrapped its icy fingers around his heart. Would this change anything? That night, as he plopped onto the old couch, exhaustion washed over him. Emma and Lucas were asleep, their fevered brows now cooling. He could finally breathe a little. The day's events played back in his mind like a reel of film. The confrontation had left him shaken, but it also sparked a flicker of change. Maybe, just maybe, they were starting to see him. As Jack sipped another cup of coffee, he peered outside, watching the snowflakes drift lazily to the ground. They danced so freely, unhindered by the judgments of others. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. He opened it to find Bob, a bulky silhouette against the white backdrop. "Thought I'd stop by," Bob said, stepping into the warmth. "How'd the speech go?" Jack chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Oh, just open my heart to the masses." Bob raised an eyebrow. "Bet you got a few conversations brewing." "Huh? Maybe," Jack replied, unsure. "But I still feel like one big question is looming." A moment of silence hung in the air. Bob glanced around, then invited Jack to sit with him. They settled by the fire, and Bob pulled out a small package from his coat. "Figured you might need this." Curiosity danced on Jack's face as Bob handed him a bundle of medicine. "For the kids. I heard they were under the weather." Jack felt gratitude swell in his chest. This is too much. Don't think of it as charity. Think of it as helping a fellow man. Just like you do for me." Jack contemplated this, the words settling over him like a warm blanket. The idea of community was suddenly broader and warmer than he had imagined. It wasn't just about him fighting alone but sharing burdens, making it a collective struggle. As they chatted, Jack's heart began to light up with possibilities. There was a sense of unity he hadn't truly recognized before. Maybe those neighbors would come around, or maybe they wouldn't. His responsibilities were vast, but their weight felt lighter when shared. But the winter's chill wasn't about to let up. Jack's heart raced at the thought of the upcoming winter storm predicted to hit that week. How prepared were they? Would the medicine be enough? What if he couldn't keep his kids safe? Bob leaned over. "You've got this, Jack. Just remember, every storm ends." Jack grasped those words, stirring hope within him. But as they talked late into the night, a thought clawed at him. The local supply store was low on essential goods, and the bad weather could cut them off completely. What if other families needed help too? "Bob, I have an idea," Jack said suddenly, an urgency tingling at the edges of his mind. "But I might need your help." Bob met Jack's eyes, the corners of his mouth lifting. "Count me in." The fire crackled as Jack laid out his plan. It was risky, uncertain, and it would take all he had. But if he didn't act now, who would? How far would he go to protect Emma, Lucas, and even those neighbors who had never seen him? Just as they finalized their plans, the wind howled outside, whipping against the walls. Jack glanced toward the windows, heart racing. Did they have enough time? The storm was approaching, and with it, challenges unlike any he faced before. Jack stood at the threshold of change, not just for himself, but for everyone in his small, fragile community. What did he just commit to? And was he ready to face the storm ahead? Jack lay in bed that night, wide awake, staring at the shadows dancing on the ceiling. The wind howled like a wounded animal outside, and he felt its chill creeping through the cracks of the old house. Anxiety twisted in his stomach. He could almost hear the whispers of doubt repeating the same question over and over. Was he truly ready for what lay ahead? With the weight of responsibility resting heavily on his shoulders, Jack made a decision. He needed to get moving. He tossed the covers aside and made his way to the kitchen, the floor cold against his feet. After pouring another cup of coffee, he pulled out a notebook and began to jot down ideas for what they would need. Supplies, support, plan. The storm was coming, and time was slipping through his fingers like sand. Empathy and fear battled within him, each thought pulling him in different directions. What if they ran out of food? What if someone didn't make it through? Jack clutched the pen tightly, and with each stroke, he poured his heart onto the pages. By dawn, he had a list that felt mountainous. He needed winter gear, bundled supplies for families, and a means to reach everyone in town. He pondered who to approach. The neighbors were still wary of him. Yet, Bobby's encouragement echoed in his mind. It wouldn't hurt to try. They were all in this together. After hastily gathering his coat, he stepped outside, the biting wind greeting him like an old enemy. He trudged through the thick snow, determination propelling his steps. Each gust of wind reminded him of the ticking clock. He needed to act fast. As he approached the first house, a familiar face appeared at the front door. It was Sarah, a young mother struggling to navigate her own causes. The surprise on her face melted into a hesitant smile. "Jack, is everything okay?" He took a deep breath. Actually, Sarah, I need your help. There might be a storm coming, and a lot of families are going to need supplies. We should gather what we can before the roads close. Her eyes widened in surprise. You want to help? Jack nodded, swallowing his pride. Yeah. I know I haven't always been present in the community. But we've got to look out for each other, don't we? After a brief pause, her smile broadened. You're right. Let me grab my things. I'll be right back. Encouraged, Jack moved from house to house, spreading the word. He saw hesitant looks transform to sparks of enthusiasm as others joined him. First it was Sarah, then her neighbor, and soon a small group of families started gathering supplies. They shared stories, laughter, and fears as they worked, united in their common goal. The camaraderie set fire to Jack's spirit. He hadn't just been a shadow anymore. He was part of something real. A community standing tall against the harsh realities of winter. As they stuffed boots, blankets, and canned goods into hastily assembled boxes, a familiar warmth washed over him. But even as he felt hope blossom, pangs of dread still lurked. What if they couldn't gather enough? What if it wasn't enough? Hours passed, the dark clouds rolling in ominously overhead. The wind picked up, and the atmosphere morphed from optimistic chatter to anxious deliberation. Jack scanned the growing pile, then looked at the faces around him. We're in this together. We've come together as a community to help ourselves. And that means something, he declared, clenching his fists to suppress his uncertainty. Then, just as his confidence began to waver, a brilliant idea struck him. What if we set up a hub? A place where anyone can drop by for what they need during the storm? His heart pounded in anticipation. Would they be on board? The nods and murmurs of agreement reignited the flicker of hope within him. Plans were soon being made as ideas flew. But just as things began to click into place, the sky darkened more ominously, and the first few snowflakes started to fall heavily. Jack's stomach turned. They had to act fast. The storm was not just a threat. It was upon them, with urgency driving him. He knew they had to work fast. The cold didn't care about their problems, and neither would the storm. Standing surrounded by hopeful faces and full boxes, Jack suddenly felt the weight of the world aiming straight at him. He realized they needed him now more than ever. Would he lead them through the storm? As the winds howled louder, he felt a shift within himself. This was his moment to prove not just to the community, but to himself that he could change. How would he rise above the chaos? And what would come next? The snow began to swirl like a blizzard of uncertainty, and the first gusts of wind howled fiercely, sending a shiver down Jack's spine. He looked around at the determined faces surrounding him, each one echoing the same resolve. The urgency pulsed through the air, tangible and electric. This was no longer just about gathering supplies. It was about survival. Okay, everyone, Jack shouted over the cacophony of the wind. We need to set up the hub in the community center. It'll be the safest place for everyone to come and gather what they need. The group nodded, and he could see the adrenaline firing them up. They were ready as they moved swiftly. Jack's heart raced with a mix of excitement and dread. He felt a kinship with these people, like they shared the same pulse of worry but also resilience. They clutched boxes filled with essentials, each step crunching in the fresh snow. It felt good to be out there with them, working toward a common goal. They reached the community center, an old brick building that had seen better days. The wind howled like a beast outside, but within, it felt warm with the glow of determination. They began to pile the supplies in the center of the main room, stacking canned goods, blankets, and winter gear as high as they could. Jack took a moment to survey the scene, a sense of pride swelling within him. But his heart sank again when he thought about the families that might not make it here in time, or those who wouldn't know they could come. He couldn't shake the fear that sometimes overwhelmed him, the feeling that it wouldn't be enough, that somehow, despite their efforts, they would falter. Let us not forget to make some flyers, Sarah suggested, breaking him out of his thoughts. We need to spread the word quickly. Flyers are a good idea, Jack agreed. Let us put down the essentials we're offering and where they can come for help. As they worked on the flyers, laughter echoed through the walls. Stories of warmth, of shared meals, of protecting one another. Jack wanted to bottle up those moments. They were a lifeline against the impending storm. But the stakes were high, and as the wind outside intensified, he couldn't help but glance out through the window. The snow was coming down in relentless sheets, drowning the small town. Panic fluttered in his chest. "Guys, we need to move," he announced, urgency creeping into his voice. "The storm is getting worse, and we need to get this done now." With quick nods, everyone jumped into action. They worked like a well-oiled machine, collecting the last of the supplies, finishing the flyers, and making sure the community center could function as a hub of safety for all. Time ticked away as the gusts howled above them, an ominous reminder that they were racing against the clock. They put up boards on the windows, securing their stronghold against the icy grip of winter. Jack felt the air thicken with purpose, a bond that felt as real as the cold creeping through the door cracks. And then, just as they were finally starting to feel slightly in control, a loud thud echoed through the center. The power flickered, and a sense of panic swept through the room. Jack's heart pounded as he turned to see the flickering lights sputter before plunging them into semi-darkness. With his voice raised, he called out, "Everyone, focus. We'll get through this. We just need to." Suddenly, the blizzard roared even louder, drowning his words. An icy draft slivered through the cracks, reminding them that nature had no mercy. What happened if they couldn't keep the community center running? What if people couldn't get to them in time? Jack's mind raced with questions, and in that split second, he felt the ground beneath him shift. The storm wasn't just raging outside, it was creeping into every corner of his mind, ready to unravel everything they had built in a matter of moments. "Let us make sure we have enough blankets. Check the supplies," he urged, grabbing Sarah's arm, his eyes wide with urgency. As they moved swiftly, Jack couldn't shake a chilling thought. Was this their final chance? Would they really be able to face the storm together? The lights flickered once more, casting shadows that danced along the walls like the storm itself. But in that moment of tension, amidst the chaos, he swore he saw flickers of determination in his neighbor's eyes, a promise that they would not fall apart despite the storm closing in on them. With the wind screaming outside, Jack took a deep breath. It wasn't just about surviving the storm. It was about proving to himself and to them that they could create their own hope, even when the world around them seemed set on breaking. Was he strong enough to carry them through the storm? As the winds howled louder, Jack felt something shift within him once again. The question remained, though, how far would he truly go to protect his newfound family? The storm outside roared, and the community center felt more like a fragile fortress with each gust that slammed against the walls. Jack glanced around the room, his stomach churning anxiously. The flickering lights cast ghostly shadows, but the faces he saw were anything but spectral. They were real. They were human, filled with courage and fear. "Is everyone all right?" he called out, forcing a smile he didn't entirely feel. The response came in the form of nods and murmurs, but the anxiety hung in the air like stale smoke. Sarah worked beside him, her brow furrowed as she double-checked the supplies in the small makeshift kitchen. "We need to ration this food carefully," she said, pulling out bags of rice and boxes of canned goods. "If the storm lasts, we have to make sure there's enough for everyone." "Right," Jack said, but even as he spoke, he felt a weight press on his chest. He knew Sarah was right, but the thought of scarcity in their tightly knit community sent a shiver down his spine. Outside, the storm grew fiercer, casting an eerie howling sound through the cracks. A sharp bang echoed as a sign hanging above the doorway swung wildly. "Do you think anyone will even know we're here?" Jack asked, his voice laced with doubt. "I hope so," Sarah replied, her voice steady but her eyes flickering toward the flickering lights. "We've done all we can. This center is a beacon. People will find us." At that moment, a new voice joined the mix. "Kitchenette stocked, and blankets are piled high," Amanda called from the back. She was huddled over a stack of heavy quilts, her smile a beacon of warmth amidst the cold chaos. "We're ready." Jack felt a lift in his heart. "You folks are amazing," he said, the sincerity breaking through. "But we still need to be realistic. If this blizzard doesn't let up soon. His words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. He watched as the expressions around him morphed, worry seeping into their features. Just then, the lights flickered once more before plunging into darkness. The low hum of panic started to rise, followed by Sarah's calming voice. Everyone, let South stay close. We can light candles. Keep talking. As Jack fumbled in the cupboard for matches, the sense of vulnerability crept over him. Each click of the match felt louder than the last, punctuating a tense silence. Finally, the flickering orange glow erupted, illuminating faces that were anxious yet unyielding in their resolve. Here, he said, lighting more candles and placing them strategically around the room. With each small flame, the shadows retreated a little further, and he felt a flicker of hope ignite in the pit of his stomach. They began to speak more of their memories, of times that didn't involve wild storms and uncertainty. Jack listened as stories of childhood winters were shared sledding down the hill behind Sarah's house, or gathering around their grandmother's fireplace. Laughter broke the solemn atmosphere, creating a small island of warmth in their precarious situation. But beneath the laughter, Jack felt the stakes climbing. He needed to come up with a plan. What if we set up shifts? He suggested, his heart racing with the idea. We could designate people to gather supplies as they come in. And maybe someone can stand guard in case the storm is worse than we thought. Sounds good, Sarah replied, her tone serious now. We have to make sure nobody gets left out, especially the kids. Nervous energy filled the air as everyone nodded in agreement. Jack felt a surge of determination. They were in this together and they would get through it. But just as he felt emboldened, a violent crash resounded outside. The very walls trembled, and Jack's heart raced. Was it the storm tearing at the community center? The fear that gripped him clawed deeper. Everyone stay close, he shouted, adrenaline now spilling into his core as his mind raced with possibilities. We need to check the windows. Gathering his friends around, he prepared to face whatever the storm was throwing at them. But as the howl of the wind mixed with the rising tension in the air, Jack had to wonder what lurked beyond those walls. Would they break under pressure, or would they find strength in one another in the face of the fury that was coming? It became clear that much more than supplies were at stake. This storm would test their very bonds. And in the thick of that chaos, a chilling thought struck Jack. If they didn't pull together, did they risk not just losing their supplies but also each other? Jack rushed to the nearest window, his breath catching in his throat as he peered out into the swirling chaos. The snow blasted against the glass in thick sheets, and he squinted, trying to make out anything beyond the blizzard's fury. It was a white abyss, the world outside swallowed whole by the storm. Jack, be careful. Sarah's voice pulled him back from the edge of fearful curiosity. He stepped away, heart pounding, and turned to find Amanda glancing nervously at the door. What if it's too late? She asked, her voice shaky. We should have left when we had the chance. All eyes turned to Jack, looking for guidance that felt strangely heavy on his shoulders. We made the right call staying put, he said, his voice firm despite the trembling in his chest. We outlast the storm together. We've survived this long. We can't lose hope now. Nods circled the room, but doubt still lingered in the air like the scent of damp wood. Does anyone have a radio? Amanda asked. We could get updates, anything to know what's happening out there. I think there's one in the back office, Sarah said, her expression shifting to determination. I'll check. Wait, Jack said, a wild thought sparking in him. If anyone is in distress, this place isn't just ours anymore. We could set a system like a rescue signal. If we hear anyone, we need to be ready. His idea seemed to ignite something in everyone. Jack felt the momentum shift, a small flame of purpose flickering to life. We can gather blankets and set up a signal right outside the doors. If it's safe enough, we'll let people in. Every hand counts, but we'll need to look out for each other. Count me in, Sarah said, her eyes brightening with the prospect. Slowly, motivation flowed back into the group, and they started gathering supplies. Blankets were stacked along the wall, and everyone worked in synchronized chaos. The tension morphed into something invigorating, and Jack felt the weight on his chest lift bit by bit. But in the middle of their operation, another crash echoed this time, closer. The lights flickered again, and a dark shadow danced across the room. It struck fear deep into Jack's heart as he held his breath. "Stay together," he shouted, his voice fierce, rallying their courage. "Do you think it's the wind?" One of the younger members murmured, wide-eyed. "We've dealt with worse," Amanda said boldly, though her hands betrayed her fear by trembling. Another crash rang out, followed by a low rumble that sounded all too ominous. Jack quickly turned, eyes wide, adrenaline coursing through him. "We can't let this scare us. We have to stay focused. Everyone check the windows. Be aware of anything." The door shuddered violently, the sound cacophonous against the howling wind. Jack felt a swell of panic. Had they truly opened themselves up to danger? And just then, as everyone scrambled, the door swung open, slammed wide against the wall. The blizzard surged in like a furious beast. The icy wind felt alive, a swirling tempest that pulled at their very souls. What Jack began, heart racing as he took a step back, brain racing through the possibilities. Then, beyond the threshold, a silhouette emerged. "Help!" a voice cried, barely audible over the storm. Jack's heart skipped. Was this what they had been waiting for? As he locked eyes with the figure, uncertainty loomed. They needed secrets, strategies, and a plan, but would they gamble their safety for the unknown? Who was the stranger? Were they a savior or more trouble than they could handle? Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his choices settle around him. The storm raged on, but so too did the fire of community, their greatest ally and their most significant risk. What would Jack decide next? Jack's heart raced, and every instinct screamed to retreat, to slam the door and seal them off from the blizzard and whatever lurked outside. Yet, the desperate plea of the figure beyond the threshold rooted him in place. "Help!" the stranger gasped again, collapsing to the ground, their shoulder brushing against the icy threshold of the cabin. Fear wrestled with compassion in Jack's chest. He was weighed down with the burden of the group's safety and the flickering hope that had brought them together. "Get back!" Sarah shouted, her eyes wide with alarm, but Jack pushed forward, resisting the urge to run away. "It's okay. We can't just leave them out there," he called over the howl of the wind, his voice struggling to break through the chaos. Amanda and Sarah exchanged nervous glances, but something told Jack that this was a moment they couldn't afford to ignore. He stepped into the freezing storm, holding out his hand toward the shadowy figure. "Come on. Grab my hand." The stranger's face was obscured by snow, but Jack could see fear and desperation etched in their features. The moment hung thick with tension as the whirling wind screamed around him. "I need you to trust me," he urged, hoping this leap of faith wouldn't cost them dearly. Seconds stretched like hours until finally, the figure grasped his gloved hand. Jack pulled them toward him, and as the stranger stumbled into him, he could feel the weight of their body against his. With a quick glance back at Sarah and Amanda, he shouted, "Help me!" Together, they pulled the stranger inside, slamming the door shut against the raging storm. The cabin erupted into a flurry of movement. Chairs were hastily pushed back as the group gathered around, eyes wide and breaths short. "What happened?" Jack asked, his voice even but his heart thudding in his chest as he took in their guest. The stranger was a young woman, shivering uncontrollably, snow melting into the warm wooden floor beneath her. "No time," she gasped, grabbing Jack's coat with trembling hands. "It's not safe. They're out there." Panic seeped into her words, and Jack felt his breath hitch. "Who's out there?" Jack pressed, trying to hold her gaze steady. "People they want to take what's left." Her eyes were wild with fear, and Jack's stomach knotted. "They've been picking off homes, ours was the last. I thought I was safe, but they'll come." Jack exchanged alarmed looks with Amanda and Sarah, who were likely wrestling with their own swirling fears. The woman's warning echoed in his mind, and he felt a chilling weight settle over the group. A new danger was looming, and it felt closer than the storm. "Are you sure?" Amanda asked, her voice steady despite the tension. Jack could see the resolve in her eyes. "We can defend this place, but we need to know what we're facing." The stranger shook her head vigorously, framing the moment. "There were 5 of them. I saw them moving through the trees. They're armed. They're hunting." The words hit like daggers. Jack's heart raced, the solidity of their safe haven now seeming like mere walls against an impending threat. "We can't let fear take over," he said, trying to rally them. "We have to come up with a plan. Get everyone feeding in information. Securing the doors, we have to be ready." Sarah nodded, stepping forward, and the spark of hope ignited once more, amidst the chilling declarations. "We need to fortify our positions. Amanda, you take the front windows," but before she could finish, a loud bang interrupted their conversation. The door rattled violently, and an icy gust rushed through the cracks. Jack's heart dropped as loud voices echoed from outside. The storm had unleashed something wicked, but one question lingered in the air, thick as the snow. Would they face it together, or would fear sever their bond? With the chaos around them, Jack felt the primal urge to protect, to be more than just survivors. He had to stand firm. Wasn't he that what community was all about? As they waited, fingers clenched tightly and eyes darting to every shadow, Jack realized the next moment would define them. What kind of fight were they willing to endure? And just as he readied himself to lead, the door shuddered once more. Shadows swirled outside. What would they do when the storm turned from snow into confrontation? The door rattled again, louder this time, like thunder crashing through the cabin's fragile safety. Jack's heart raced as the realization hit him. Their sanctuary was under attack. "Everyone, grab something," he barked. The urgency in his voice seemed to ignite the room. Sarah dashed to the kitchen, pulling out a heavy frying pan, while Amanda stuffed her pockets with whatever she could find: bottled water, a flashlight. The stranger, still shivering against the wall, tried to catch her breath, but her eyes were wide with terror. "You don't understand. They'll all come right in." "Not if we can help it," Jack replied, fighting back the fear swirling inside him. His mind raced with memories of stories whispered about the outlaws who roamed these lands, legends given life by the wind outside. Now it seemed those tales had materialized, bringing with them a reality he never wanted to confront. He motioned for everyone to move quietly toward the windows, forcing themselves to peer into the storm. The cabin felt too small, the walls too thin. One voice outside cut through the blizzard. "You know you're not safe in there." It was a taunt, chilling to the bone. Jack clenched his fists, ready to protect not just himself, but everyone who stood with him. "Stay low," he whispered, his breath coming in quick bursts. "If they're hunting, we need to make sure they don't catch us off guard." He glanced back at the stranger, catching her terrified gaze once more. "What did they look like? Can you remember?" She swallowed hard, her eyes scanning the room as if the mere mention of them would summon the hunters. They wore masks. Their clothes were dark, almost blending into the night. A tremor passed through her voice as she added, "They were moving fast just like wolves." Amanda murmured, pressing her back against the wall. "Coordinated an ambush." A sudden resounding thud made everyone jump, the door quaking violently beneath the relentless wind. Jack's heart raced as he stepped closer, drawn to the sound. "It's just the storm," he told himself, though doubt gnawed at him. But as he scanned the room, he knew they had to prepare for the worst. Sarah's voice was a whisper. "What if we don't make it? What if they break in?" Tears brimmed in her eyes, her usual resolve cracking under the pressure. "Then we fight like hell," Jack replied, adrenaline pumping through his veins. "All of us together." He took a breath, testing the strength of his own words. "No matter what happens, we'll face it as a team. We're not just individuals. We are a family now." The weight of his own statement sank in, binding them closer. Jack felt a flicker of hope as he scanned their faces, resolved and determined despite the danger that hovered on their doorstep. "Okay, let us move." He took the lead, setting up a solid line of defense along the windows, while Amanda and Sarah pushed furniture against the door. The stranger, now visibly shaking from more than just cold, grabbed a couple of heavy candles, illuminating the room's corners. But then another sound ripped through the wind, a new voice, layered in authority. "You're outnumbered. Surrender now, and we'll make this quick." Fear washed over Jack again, this time deeper. They weren't just looking for supplies. They had come for them. "Behind the couch," he shouted. It was cramped, but they squeezed together, hearts hammering and breaths held. The cabin was now dark, save for the flickering light. Outside, shadows moved like phantoms. Jack's next words felt like they hung in the air, heavy with implication. "Whatever happens next, we stand together. No one fights alone." Their resolve forged a protective barrier, minds sharpened by the storm of uncertainty. Jack felt the pulse of risk surge in his veins, a clear sense of unity. But only the storm could determine their fate. Would they find a way to fend off the darkness creeping closer, or would surrender be a choice laid at their feet? The thumping on the door intensified, mirroring the tension coiling around them like a snake poised to strike. And with that realization, Jack took a deep breath, preparing for the roar of chaos that lay ahead. The wind howled like a trailing ghost as the group huddled behind the couch, fear binding them together. Each thump on the door sent jolts of dread through Jack's chest. His senses were on high alert, every creak of the cabin making him flinch. There was no retreat now, they were cornered. "Keep your voices low," he urged, his whisper sharp amidst the silence. Sarah clutched the frying pan like a lifeline, her knuckles white with tension. Amanda, her eyes reflecting flickering candlelight, shared a determined nod with him. And the stranger's breath came in shaky puffs, revealing the fragile facade of control they all struggled to maintain. "I'll distract them," Jack said suddenly, a reckless courage surging through him. "If I can lure them away, you all can escape through the back." "No," Sarah exclaimed, her voice breaking the hush. "You can't just put yourself out there like that." Her fear morphed into panic, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I won't let them take anyone." Jack's voice was firm but tender. He had to maintain his resolve and hers too. "We'll never forgive ourselves if we don't try." Just as he finished, a loud crash reverberated through the air like a gunshot. The door buckled this time, a jagged splinter cracking through the wood. "You're running out of time," the authoritative voice called again, mocking dangerously close. Jack clenched his jaw, heart pounding like a war drum. "If any of you care about your safety, you'll trust me," he said firmly, scanning their faces. They looked back at him, each lost in their own spirals of doubt and fright. His heart sunk. Did he truly have a choice here? Amanda, breaking the silence, whispered, "Maybe we could all go out the back. Stick together." "No," the stranger said, shaking her head vehemently. "They'll surround you. I've seen them move. They're fast and ruthless. Divided, we're dead. Together, maybe we stand a chance." Jack's mind churned. They needed a plan, and quickly. The thought of losing anyone stirred a rage deep within. "All right then, let us do this," he said, eyes burning with determination. "We stick together. We fight back or we go down swinging." The pounding at the door had shifted to a rhythm now, as if it were a heartbeat of the danger that loomed. "Just listen to my cue," Jack instructed, feeling the weight of their hope pressing heavily against him. "We open the door when I say so, and then we charge. You all ready?" A wave of murmured confirmations rippled through the group. A collective breath exhaled. The seconds stretched out like elastic, each tick of the clock echoing louder in the charged air. Jack knew he was holding onto a thread, a glimmer of chance woven into their desperate gamble. "Now!" he cried, voice shaking but filled with unwavering resolve. As the door crashed open, chaos exploded. Jack lunged forward, a storm of movement. It was dark outside, the shadows shifting rapidly as figures lunged into the cabin. The flickering light caught outlines, faces hidden behind masks, eyes glinting with malicious intent. In that moment, anything could happen. Fear twisted with adrenaline. They were standing at the precipice of survival, hearts racing and spirits colliding against the storm. "Fight!" he shouted as darkness surged towards them. They were committed, teammates bound by blood and choice. Would they find their strength amidst the madness, or would the night claim them as its own? The answer hung thick in the air. just as the tempest swirled menacingly outside, wrapping around them like fateful whispers. Jack stood at the threshold between darkness and survival, his heart pounding against the chaos swirling around him. With adrenaline coursing through him, he charged forward into the stormy night, flanked by Sarah, Amanda, and the stranger, a formidable unit ready to fight for their lives. The door swung violently open, and the howling wind rushed inside like a spirit intent on destruction. Jack squared his shoulders, his voice booming above the tempest. "We fight for each other. Together." The masked figures outside lunged forward, silhouetted shadows against the blizzard. Jack couldn't see their faces clearly, but he could feel their malice. "On my signal," he yelled, adrenaline coursing through him like wildfire as he counted down. Time slowed. He felt a surge of courage, bolstered by the unwavering presence of his newfound family beside him. 3, 2, 1 now. They erupted from the cabin, an all-out sprint into the tempest. Jack took the lead, charging toward their aggressors with determination. The snow whipped at his face like blades, but he pressed on. The echoes of their struggle blended into the howling winds. Jack's eyes narrowed as he caught sight of the outlaws, their movements calculated and pressing. "Don't give them an inch," he shouted, as fists and fury collided. Sarah swung her frying pan, bringing it down hard on one of the attackers, while Amanda lunged forward, tending to another with a fierce kick. The stranger, previously frail and frightened, surprised them all as she dashed forward, wielding a bottle like a weapon. With every moment, Jack felt their resolve amplifying all their fears, losses, and the dreams of a better tomorrow channeled into this singular act of defiance. They weren't merely fighting for survival. They were fighting for family. Amidst the chaos, Jack's adrenaline surged as he crashed into one of the attackers. They grappled, twisting in the snow. Jack could feel the cold seeping into his bones, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the fight. "Don't back down," he called, voice steady even as panic clawed at his insides. Nearby, the others fought valiantly, mouths moving in silent creeds of determination. They were connected, each blow empowering the next. Jack caught a glimpse of Sarah and Amanda, their faces fierce in the light of the briefest breaks in the storm, and that filled him with vigor. They were in this together, and together they were strong. Finally, they began to push back. One by one, the attackers stumbled, faltering under the genuine unity that radiated from Jack and his friends. And just as the wind screamed with the shadows of doubt, they began to retreat, impaired by their own arrogance. A fierce shout erupted from Jack as he swung one last punch with all his remaining strength, a resounding blow that sent a clear message. "They wouldn't be broken. Let this be a lesson," he declared, as the outlaws scrambled back, fear in their eyes, aware they had underestimated the power of community. The wind howled, but it no longer felt like an enemy. It became a backdrop to their triumph, a sign that they had faced the storm and emerged, not just alive but united. Breathing heavily, Jack turned to his team, feeling the warmth of victory seeping through the bitter cold. "We did it," he gasped, disbelief mingling with joy. "We really did it." The stranger, panting, managed a tearful laugh. "You're not just a handyman, Jack Dawson. You're a hero." Despite himself, Jack choked back tears. They were heroes, and together they had stood up against the darkness not just for survival, but for each other. For a chance to build a life full of warmth and laughter once again. As they trudged back toward the cabin, the reality of their success washed over them, each step lighter than the last. They weren't alone anymore. They had a community, a family forged in the deepest storms, and they had turned vulnerability into strength. When Jack entered the cabin, the flickering light felt warm instead of menacing. He turned to his friends, who were still catching their breath, their faces glowing with the light of victory. "From here on out, we're going to take care of each other. No one fights alone. We stick together always." Sarah nodded, wiping the sweat and snow from her brow. "We'll make sure everyone knows they're welcome here," she declared with conviction. "Together, we'll face whatever comes next. This is just the beginning." Jack smiled, his heart swelling with pride and hope. The storm outside may have been fierce, but inside these walls, strength proliferated like a flame. And as the winter night descended and the community huddled together, they knew they were ready for whatever lay ahead. Together, they had survived the storm, and together, they would conquer the changing seasons of life. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about this incredible ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to show your support. Now is the moment. Don't wait not even one more second to share.